This is a story about the unification of India. Once upon a time, between the years of 322 and 187 BCE, there lived an Indian king named Chandragupta. He lived during a time when India was not unified and kingdoms were constantly at war. Chandragupta had a very strong army and came up with a plan to conquer all the warring kingdoms and unite them under his rule. His new empire was called the Mauryan Empire. Chandragupta was a harsh ruler. He used secret spies and torture to control his enemies. However, he did many great things too. He created a strong government and made laws. He also made sure farmers had water for their crops and built thousands of miles of roads across his empire to connect everyone. Toward the end of Chandragupta's rule, he gave up his power. No one really knows why. He gave up all his worldly possessions and left his empire to travel and live among monks. Chandragupta's departure allowed his grandson Ashoka to ascend to the throne. Ashoka, like his grandfather, used warfare to grow the Mauryan Empire. But then, something happened. After a brutal war, Ashoka sat on his horse looking over the bloody battlefield. He could hear the groans and cries of dying men. He became horrified of the death and destruction he and his soldiers had caused. From that day on, he swore he would never use violence again. Ashoka adopted the Buddhist religion and based his rule on the Buddhist values of love, peace, and nonviolence. As a Buddhist, he respected all living things. He gave up hunting and became a vegetarian. He encouraged all his people to follow Buddhism. Ashoka encouraged his people to be respectful and kind. He told them to respect their elders and tolerate other religions. Ashoka called the people under his reign his children, and he was their father. Ashoka spread Buddhism throughout India and beyond its borders. He built temples called stupas. He also wrote edicts, laws, for the people to follow. His edicts were engraved on pillars that he built throughout his empire. His edicts had four main goals. His first goal was to promote Buddhist values. This edict encouraged people to act morally, do the right thing, and to not become attached to material things. Ashoka's second goal was to protect the welfare of his people. This goal ensured people had good health and enough food, clean water, and shelter. His third goal was justice. Ashoka wanted to be sure his laws were fair and that people were treated fairly in courts and jails. Ashoka's last goal was security. These laws dealt with people outside of the Mauryan Empire, or enemies. Ashoka's reign is known today as a golden age in India. India's unification started with Chandragupta, his largest contribution, and ended 45 years after Ashoka's death. Ashoka's largest contribution to Indian history was his spreading of Buddhist beliefs throughout India. The end. Click this link to learn more about Buddhism and its goals. Buddhists believe in reincarnation. Take this fun quiz to see what animal you will be reincarnated as.
Little Red Riding Hood. Let's start the story a different way. It was dark inside the wolf.
Hey guys, welcome to Hip Hughes History, World History Edition. This time, guys, we're going down the road and we're doing a little bit of the Buddhism. I don't care if you're a kid in school, a lifelong learner, or cray-cray on the internet. We're going to do the basics for you right now as we go ahead and do the giddy up for the learning. So let's go get her done right now. All right, guys, before we talk about Buddha himself, his name is going to be Siddhartha Gautama. We're going to talk a little bit about Buddhism in generalities. And many people don't consider Buddhism a religion. Some do, but some don't. And if you've watched the Hindu lecture, you should go watch that lecture, you learn that Hindus try to find the Dharma in their life, the way of living their life according to principle. Everyone has their own Dharma, their own path. And some people consider Buddhism itself to be a Dharma, a way, a teaching, and it's much less focused on the exterior. It's not really monotheistic or polytheistic. They're not talking about gods or goddesses. They're talking about you. They're talking about what you can do to free yourself, to find enlightenment, to what they call nirvana. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But we have the year at about 563 BCE. And you have to remember that a lot of these stories are passed down. They could be nonfiction. They might some be fiction, but they are legends that are believed by people who follow this faith. And Siddhartha Gautama, and I could be mispronouncing it just a little bit, was born in Nepal. Nepal is in northeast India, up there in the mountains, Himalayas, and he is born to a noble Hindu family, a king and a queen, and his mother has a dream that his birth is going to be the coming of a great one, of an enlightened human being, of somebody who's going to be either a great ruler, if he stays home, or a great spiritual leader if he leaves the home. So his daddy, King Daddy, really wants him to stay home because he wants him to be the emperor, the king, the ruler. So for the first half of his life, Siddhartha is going to stay home. His dad's going to make him stay home. He's going to be insulated. Every whim, every desire, every pleasure is given to the guy. He gets married, even has a son. But then he makes 4 trips at the age of 29. And the legend is that on each one of these trips, he sees something that bugs him out a little bit, because you have to remember, he has never seen misery. The guy's living like a prince, literally. So the first time he goes out, he sees an old man. And the second time he sees a sick man. And the third time he sees a dead body, a corpse. And the fourth time he sees like a happy guy begging for change, somebody who looks really happy but really poor. And he puts together this story that, oh my goodness, everybody gets old, everybody gets sick, everybody dies, and that some people are still happy knowing all of these terrible things are going to happen. So that brings him to the point where he decides he can't stay home. He needs answers. He needs to figure out what's going on. How can we be happy when there's so much misery and suffering? And that is going to be at the heart of Buddha's teachings, the enlightened one. Now, there's 84,000 teachings, and I only wanted to do like a 10-minute video, so we're going to keep this quite simple, guys. Now, let's take a look at the 4 noble truths of Buddhism. You can handle 4 important things, right? Let's do it. All right, before we do the 4 noble truths, I don't want you to think that Buddha left the palace and he found a rock and it said 4 noble truths on it. He had to figure it out for himself. That's at the heart of Buddhism. You got to do it yourself. No one's going to do it for you. It's your life. It's your enlightenment. It's your cycle of reincarnation. They believe in reincarnation, but they don't believe in a caste system. This attracted a lot of laborers and the poorer classes to Buddhism because you could reach nirvana no matter what your wealth was. Anybody could do it. But Buddha, when he left that palace, first had to figure out things for himself. And he tried going to gurus and talking it out and debating and wandering the hills. He tried fasting, not eating food, and seeing if that would lead him to some kind of enlightenment. And eventually he found it in meditation, in a fig tree at Gaya. And this famous fig tree is where supposedly Buddha meditated for 49 days. And then a big light bulb went over his head, and now he figured it out. He's enlightened, and he's going to come up with 4 noble truths. And the 4 noble truths are key to Buddhism. And the first one is dukkha. And dukkha basically means that you understand that everything in life is basically craving and suffering. That at the root of everything, we're all suffering because we want. Buddha said that the key to a happy life was wanting what you had and not wanting what you didn't have. So that's the first noble truth, is understanding dukkha. And then the second one is understanding where that originates from. That's samudaya. And what that means is that you understand that suffering comes from you wanting stuff, that nothing is permanent, everything is non-permanent. So as soon as you're like, I really want that gum, oh, I need that gum, and you get the gum, then the gum's gone, and you want something else. So what Buddha says is that in the second noble truth, you have to understand that your suffering originates in your mind, wanting stuff and desiring stuff. So then the third noble truth is nirodha, which means stopping the dukkha. If you can stop the dukkha, then you can create nirvana. And that means once you've reached nirvana, you don't have to keep coming back to this miserable place. Because the idea is when you want something, when you need something, that creates karma. And that karma is what keeps you trapped in this reincarnation cycle. So that's the third noble truth, is realizing that you have to stop all of this madness. And the fourth noble truth is magga. And magga means that there is a pathway to doing this. And this eightfold pathway is the next thing we're going to look at, which is the fourth noble truth. And I'll give you a hint. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. It's just right. So this is called the middle way. That's why I said it's not too hot, not too cold. It's called the eightfold path, or the middle way, finding the right way through this life to reach nirvana and enlightenment. And like the Hindus, they believe it's possible to break this cycle. One of the differences, besides them not believing in the caste system, is Hindus believe you're always born back as a human. Buddhists believe that you can come back as a supernatural being, as an angel, as another Buddha. They believe you can come back on the downside as a beast or a demon as well. But there is a lot of different beliefs in Buddhism, so we don't want to pigeonhole them right there. But let's go through the eightfold path, the middle path. It's not too hot, it's not too cold. It's the middle path, the middle way between your desire and your suffering. In order to break that, they all start with the word right. Number one is right understanding, and that means understanding the four noble truths. Right thought, but you have to be able to control your mind. Buddhists sometimes say that we have monkey brains, and that we aren't the thoughts that flash in our minds, that in order to be a good Buddhist, we have to have determination and resolve in our faith and in our way. Right speech, you can't be degrading people. You can't be, slandering and gossiping and lying. That will create bad karma, and that's not good. Number 4 is right conduct, which means you have to be nonviolent. You have to be a good person. The next one is a right means of making a living. They don't believe that we should be in any type of profession that brings pain and suffering or violence to other creatures. And then we have number 6, right mental effort. And this means the ability not only to be aware of your mind, but to control it by eliminating negative thoughts. That's a big one in Buddhism. You can't be a monkey brain and just be thinking negative things all day, because that's going to propel you into misery and suffering and want. And then we have number 7, right mindfulness, that we need to be aware of our state, our feelings, our physical body, our mental state, and be in touch with ourselves. You have to know your feelings, guys. And then we have number 8, right concentration. Buddhism is really, at the end of the day, about meditation, about learning how to control your mind in order to clear it through your breathing and your visualization techniques, in order to come to your own truths, your own understandings, once again, your own nirvana. Now, all Buddhists, and you have to remember that Buddhists just aren't in India. Buddhism travels through the centuries. It's going to make its way to China, Japan, Korea. It's all over East Asia. It's the most widely spread religion in East Asia. But at the end of the day, all Buddhists say a prayer to the 3 jewels, the 3 cornerstones of Buddhism. I take refuge in my Buddha. I take refuge in my Dharma. I take refuge in my religious community. So how about that, guys? Maybe now you can follow your Dharma to get rid of your karma, so you can have a little bit of Kurt Cobain in your life. That was a Nirvana joke. I hope I didn't offend everybody. All right, guys, that's it for me right now. That's it for Hip Hughes. We hope that your brain is a little bit bigger. And I'm going to say goodbye. And I'm going to say it because I always say it. Where tension goes, energy flows. We'll see you guys next time that you press my buttons.